Yeah.
Because what I'm going to be talking about is how we have collaborated in London. We found that it was getting very frustrating that there weren't more patients benefiting from peer support. Can you move on the slides, please? And so, you know, the problems which have already been described by JOT were preventing people from benefiting from peer support. Click the slides on again, please. And despite sort of me spending quite a bit of time over the years trying to get things moving by helping individual units, they were changing too slowly for my liking. And if you move the slides on, it occurred to me that perhaps instead of trying to get each unit to do peer support for itself, if we worked together, maybe that would make it easier. So if we move the slides on, what did we actually do? Well, luckily, when I spoke to the individuals at each of the London kidney units, they were all quite interested in getting together and in looking at what we could achieve, perhaps working together rather than working each of us in our own individual silo. So we started meeting together regularly, and there were representatives from each kidney unit, and that was sort of heavily nurses, but we had a good mix of various MDT members and 2 people with lived experience who themselves were volunteering as peer supporters. We hoped that by collaborating, we could get the peer support started in units where there wasn't any, and we could get it even better in units where it was already happening. And above all, really make it sustainable rather than having it wax and wane as we've seen happen so often in individual kidney units. So if we click on, I'll tell you about actually what we did together. Click on again. The first thing we did was sharing ideas, knowledge and experience. And obviously for units where there was no peer support, being able to have the support and the mentoring and the information and ideas from units who were experienced in peer support was very helpful. But it's not just a one-way street, because anybody can come up with a good idea which can really benefit units even if they've been doing it for a while. So that was really helpful. If you click on, there's also the thing about when you work together and when you're part of a team, it can be really inspirational. And when you're having a bit of a down in terms of your energy or enthusiasm, you can be buoyed along by people, and it's really helpful to be able to get motivated by other people's successes. If we click on, we can share the slightly less exciting side of things like paperwork, documents, templates, so that no one is wasting time, sort of creating a spreadsheet or a letter inviting people to training or anything like that. So that's all pretty basic so far. The next bit is that we were running joint training for peer support volunteers. And I remember the first day that we did this, it was really exciting. 9 months into our time working together at the Royal Free Hospital, we invited patient volunteers from each of the 7 London kidney units, and we had representatives from all across London, and we trained, I think, 20 something peer support volunteers in that day, and about 12 peer support champions, and we also sort of trained the champions in a bit of a train-the-trainer model, so that people who came to that training could then potentially go on and participate in delivering the training in future sessions. Again, trying to embed sustainability, trying to make sure that peer support doesn't depend on only 1 or 2 individuals, but that lots of people are sharing the skills and doing things together. And then the last thing that we started sharing was the peer support volunteers themselves. And having a London-wide pool of peer support volunteers means that we can better meet individuals' needs, because we can have a really broad and deep and diverse pool of supporters who can support anyone else across the whole of London. If we move on to the next slide, you can see how that affected 2 of the users in the group. They were very positive about the outcomes from working together. And if you click on, you can see, I think you need to click twice. Yeah, click again. So the top line shows the position of each of the 7 London kidney units at the start of our collaboration. And there were several units down towards the left-hand side of this graphic with very little peer support happening. And if you click on again, I think twice to make the next red box, you can see that sort of about 18 months later, we'd successfully managed to move people sort of to progress and develop and have peer support accessible or have volunteers trained. So even in just 18 months, this work together did get peer support much more widely available across London. And if you click again, I think it's really important to note that all of that work was done without any additional funding, without any additional resources, without sort of tangible, practical network input. It was just passionate individuals driving it and making it happen. But of course, money does make things more easy. So if you click on, I'm going to tell you about when we joined forces with Kidney Care UK. And this was a very exciting time because we were looking at removing the responsibilities from the clinicians in those 7 kidney units. Things like the administration, things that really bogged us down, so that we could just do our job in terms of face-to-face patient promotion and promoting it within our units. So in the spring of 2024, 2 years ago, if you click on a London Regional Peer Support Coordinator was recruited and employed under Kidney Care UK, but in partnership with the London Kidney Network. And by partnership, I mean 2 things. I mean, partly there was some money put in on both sides, and partly the sort of the work and the ownership belongs to both sides. But crucially, employing and managing this person, it belongs to Kidney Care UK, so it doesn't belong to any of the doctors, nurses, or other clinicians in the units. This person liaises with trust volunteer offices, so it helps with removing that governance. They support and manage the volunteers, and they take full responsibility for processing all referrals for peer support and making peer support happen. So all that the champions in the individual kidney units have to do is promote peer support to their colleagues and patients, and then send names along to the regional coordinator, and they do all of that boring but necessary work about making peer support happen and making sure that there are volunteers trained and able and ready to give that support. If we click on, you can see how that affected sort of referrals for peer support across London, which more than doubled in the year or 2 after that person came into post. And if you click on again, you can see benefits for patients. Just give you a moment to read that. I'm looking at my own clock too to give myself a 1-minute warning. And if we click on, you can see the benefits for staff who just find it wonderful not to be bogged down with the admin. It's so much easier and so much less time consuming for them. But it is a partnership, and it needs to be noted that this does not mean that Kidney Care UK are taking over all of the peer support responsibility for London. So if you click on again, it just shows a template of a letter that was written to each of the clinical directors of the London kidney units, asking for written confirmation that they were going to be active participants in this collaboration, and they would give the authority and responsibility authority and responsibility to the peer support champions, and preferably write it into job descriptions, so that being a peer support champion is not specific to a person, but it's specific to a role, again, embedding sustainability. So I hope I've convinced you that collaboration really can be a game changer when it comes to helping more people access peer support and reducing clinicians' time. If you click on, what some of you might be feeling is potentially a bit grumpy, because you might think, well, it's all very well for you in London. That sounds great. But, I don't live in London. So what am I going to do with that? Well, the good news is that Kidney Care UK are willing to make the similar offer to every region in the UK if peer support doesn't already exist there. And if you click on, They have last year gone into collaboration with the kidney units in the Northeast, and hot off the press, a collaboration with the Southeast is just coming into play. And that segues me perfectly into our next presenter, who is